I tell them, look, the things that, you used to do in terms of managing your expenses, maxing out your 401k, that stuff doesn't stop being important. It's just, you need to realize that the solutions to the challenges you face, the problems you need to be solving for, they're not going to be solved by just doing more of what you've done in the past or trying harder around things like managing expenses or trying to get your life to work, the way that it used to before you had money.
Hello, my name is Christopher Nelson. Welcome to Tech Careers and Money Talk. I am your host. I'm excited to be with you here today. And for technology employees, managing equity compensation can be incredibly difficult. I know the learning curve for myself was rather steep, and it's the same for everybody. However, there is a way that we can learn faster, and that is talking to people that have experience in managing equity compensation. Today, we're going to talk with Landon Loveall. He has been a certified financial planner, helping technology employees specifically for the last 12 years with a company called KB Financial Advisors based out of San Francisco, the heart of Silicon Valley. So Landon today is going to give us 5 critical money lessons that he has learned in helping hundreds of technology employees manage equity compensation and mindset as they're making some of the biggest financial decisions of their lives. Let's go talk to Landon right now. We are here with Landon Loveall, and Landon has been a financial planner for how many years now?
So going back to 2010, I think is what I'll call the official start. So 14 years and working with tech employees, initially when I started out working with tech employees, my clients were pretty much the same age as I was. And I've got long-term clients that are, still my age, but I keep kind of moving in one direction, and those tech employees I'm working with, they all stay right there kind of in their mid-30s.
Right. And so from working with tech employees through the years, seeing a lot of changes with equity comp, watching a lot of the behavior, you've come up with 5 critical lessons that you want to share today with people. Let's start with what's number 1?
Yeah, so number 1, and it's something that I really see clients struggle with, and it's so kind of rewarding when you see someone go from the way they used to think about money to getting through this, and that's stop thinking about your paycheck. So stop thinking about your financial life as only revolving around that direct deposit that's coming to you every 2 weeks, and start thinking about your financial life in terms of your balance sheet.
That is a huge shift for people, and it's one that as technology employees, like we were never taught, right? It is, as equity compensation has taken off and more people are trading for equity versus buying it or building it, we do need to understand that we are part owners in these companies. We are building out our balance sheet through ownership very quickly. And the more we can change that perception of it's not about the paycheck, but it is about this balance sheet and how do we nurture, how do we manage and grow it, that is an inflection point, I'd say, in our financial maturity. And so what are some of the things that you see when the light bulbs go off? What's some of the inflection points for people?
Yeah. So, and it's more than just money. It's kind of the way your life works. And then it's, going from a time when you had no money to now a point in life where you do have money, and kind of realizing, that nothing really changed, but everything's changed. And so when I see that light bulb go off, I had one client tell me, we used to really budget and watch our expenses. And now, the house, the kids, we're just so busy. And I got to thinking, man, we spend a lot of money on takeout. And so he said, I looked at it. I think if we really worked hard, we could cut $250 a month on takeout. But then I looked at my portfolio, and a good day in the market is now worth tens of thousands of dollars for us. So,
Mm.
like, am I going to worry about $250 a month on takeout, or am I going to focus on, my portfolio? And I was like, exactly. That's, what we're talking
Mm.
about is I tell them, look, the things that, you used to do in terms of managing your expenses, maxing out your 401k, that stuff doesn't stop being important. It's just, you need to realize that the solutions to the challenges you face, the problems you need to be solving for, they're not going to be solved by just doing more of what you've done in the past or trying harder around things like managing expenses or trying to get your life
Mm.
to work, the way that it used to before you had money.
100%, in the sense that, now you've gone beyond just working for income. You have these assets, this very full balance sheet, and managing that can now, it can now be something more. And again, this is something that it's so important that we have conversations, we seek advice, we get into communities where people are having these conversations, because this is something that's not taught in school.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the first kind of practical ways that I'll help clients make this transition is when we talk about, if they're at a public, tech company and they've got kind of that really great benefits package that you can get, you know, we'll oftentimes front load and try to max out that 401k, both pre tax and after tax, as quickly as we can, as early in the year as possible. And
Yeah.
so, the result of doing that is there may be a few months where, you're not getting that direct deposit and you're using, the cash that you have available to you to cover your living expenses. And for those clients, that can be the first time that they've ever really experienced that. And kind of realize, hey, I'm doing this because long term, this is the best decision for me to make. And I don't need that paycheck, that direct deposit hitting my bank account every 2 weeks for, my financial life to keep running the way it should.
Yeah, that is a big that is a big switch when you realize, oh, I actually have enough over here to manage through some periods of time. Now I can go and build up those assets. I'm actually making a shift and focusing on my asset development versus being obsessed with that income.
Yep.
That's a huge mindset shift. And that is the first, I think, real shift when you start realizing I can actually start building assets that can one day be managed as a business.
Yep.
So, number two, treat your career like an NFL contract. Know the value of your career. I love this. Tell me more about that.
So, every spring, oftentimes, a lot of our clients, they get their comp letter, which shows here's your salary, here's your bonus target, here's the new RSU grant that you're getting. And for a lot of them, that's kind of the limit of how they think about the value of their career.
Mm.
And so we have started, showing clients just your salary. If you work to that standard retirement age of 65, just your salary, here's how much value remains in your career, to start to realize, like, and to view your career as an asset, that you have to be managed, and not just thinking about, that paycheck and that's my career. I have a job, I get paid, and that's kind of the limits of how I
Mm.
think about things. And the NFL is a really good example because, Major League Baseball and the NBA, they have a lot more protections around that money and those contracts being guaranteed. In
Right?
tech and in the NFL, you're always at risk of, being released, being laid off, and having to move on to the next opportunity, but still need to recognize that there's a tremendous amount of dollars that are going to come your way over the course of your career.
It is, and understanding when and what level you're going to max those out. I mean, just in my trip back, I was talking with some peers at the level that, I exited in 2022. I played at a senior director, VP level in IT, and I know people right now who are getting, $1 million a year packages with salary, and then also with equity comp. Some at pre-IPO, some at post-IPO, but it's there with, let's say, a 20-degree variance. That is then, you can then go sign a 4-year contract for $4 million a year, and you're at this level. Do you want to go up? Do you want to navigate? How do you stay relevant? Also keeping an eye on the, how well your team is performing, right? Same thing like an NFL team. Is your team, winning? Are they moving forward? Or as are you on the special teams, and the special teams is getting hammered, and they may release the coach and everybody on that. So I love this analogy. And it is important because when you are there as a team, you want to be all in. You want to be wearing the jersey. You are an owner in that company. You're getting some shares, but also understanding that you can be cut at any time, but knowing and understanding your free market value. That's one of the things I like to talk to people about is you're a free agent in this market, and you have to be clear on the value that you can deliver, because the trade for equity, because that's what it is, right? I'm trading my time and my talent for equity. That's the negotiation. And if I'm clear on what I'm bringing to the table and the value of that in the marketplace, I know what other free agents are out there. I know how I can compete against them. That's going to allow you to stay relevant. That's going to allow you to negotiate and stay in the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think the third one, so number one is, we're transitioning from the income to the balance sheet. Treat your career like an NFL contract. And I'm going to add on, and yourself like a free agent, right? You're there. Grow your approach to money. Go beyond the DIY.
Yeah, this one. So regardless, whether we're talking about the skill set that you need to be successful in your career, or we're talking about that small business owner, early on in our 20s and our 30s, we really are on our own, and you've got to kind of figure things out for yourself and kind of navigate things individually. But it's usually in your 30s when we talk about money, to where you get really busy in your career, and you may start to get really busy in your life, and time becomes limited and extremely valuable. And then the amount of money that you start dealing with, so time's kind of the first thing, money's the second. The amount of money that you start dealing with, you reach a point where if I try to do this on my own and I mess it up, there's a real cost to those mistakes for me. And so, go beyond just trying to do it yourself. And this is where a lot of the financial press is really doing, tech employees a disservice, because a lot of what's written out there, has been written about, fees. And I'm all about, making sure that you're getting good value for the fees that you pay. But a lot of what's written is about avoiding fees at all costs, which is usually going to end up with you trying to do this yourself for free. And I've just seen so many examples on the tax side, of mistakes that tens of thousands of dollars. And then on the investment side, that's where we can get into that $1 million mistake, where, any good advisor could see this coming, could have warned you about it and recommended a different course of action. And then it's only kind of after that experience has become real to you and you've gone through the pain of that loss that you start to recognize how much it hurts and how costly those experiences can be. So just avoid it, recognize that point at which I'm limiting myself by trying to do this on my own. I don't have to do this anymore. And I'm going to experience better results by, hiring someone else to help me with this so that I can focus on the things that only I can do, that no one else can do for me. And a lot of times that's going to be related to your career.
I 100% think that you are correct, right? That when you get to the point where you're ultimately managing millions of dollars and all of the different specialties that come with that, whether that's asset protection, risk management as insurance, wealth management, where do you invest your money, tax exposure, 100%. Now, the lens, and I mean, I think the conversation that's so important for us to have is how do we build trust, or how do we do this in a way where people feel comfortable? Because to your point, Landon, there are, let's just call it what it is. There are definitely people out there in the financial services industry that, like any other business, right? You have great practitioners, you have poor practitioners. And I think some of the poor ones give it a bad name. And so that's why I think it is important for technology employees to know a few things as they're walking down the street. And I think that you're going to agree with me. I'm pretty sure. Number one is you can go to fee-only financial advisors and you can go get advice that has nothing to do with wealth management, but they can walk you through a financial plan and explain things to you for a flat fee. That's what we did after our first IPO. Is we sat down, we'd been very much DIYers when it came to the financial planning side, and we said, let's go start talking to people. And that was a great way to build trust. The other thing is you can go and engage a very experienced tax professional that will make sure that you limit all those mistakes directly as well. But to your point, Landon, you will not be able to experience the growth as an individual. You're not going to start breaking past the 10 million and beyond and really growing barrier until you assemble a team, until you start managing it as a business. You will become that limiting factor.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the great things about the change from when I started in this industry to now is it's a lot easier to find, those good providers who are out there. And there's also a lot more people to choose from. And so when we talk about fee only financial advice, you've got a range of people, from people who will, meet with you hourly or in a limited engagement to people who will provide advice only, but in more of an ongoing relationship to, kind of that full wealth management. So there's a lot more consumer choice that's out there.
Right.
And then on the tax side, one of the things about how we have developed our service is, we used to hear a lot from tech employees who would say, I go to a financial advisor and I go, okay, what should I do? And they'll kind of tell me what they think I should do. And I'll go, well, what about taxes? Well, we don't do taxes. And then I go to a tax professional and I say, hey, what should I do? And they say, well, you tell me what you want to do and I'll tell you what the taxes are. And so there was really this frustration that was there. And that's one of the things we've tried to solve for by combining financial planning, investments, and tax as one whole instead of three different pieces where there's not communication going on between the three and where you're having to spend more of your time trying to manage those different providers instead of having, a team of professionals who are working on the whole.
And that's really important. And I think to your point, there's a lot more choices today. And I think that people have the opportunity to go out and select. And, what I always try to let people know is take your time, talk to a few people, understand where your fit is philosophically. You want to be able to feel comfortable. And at the end of the day, it goes back to when you're not the DIY, you are the CEO of your business.
Yep.
And sometimes you will need to let people go,
Yep.
right? You need to be able to say, this isn't working out. Yes, it'll be painful, but I have to let you go. We have a story where we had an amazing woman who helped us with our taxes for many, many years. And the reality is she was getting close to retirement age. She wasn't taking on clients. And we saw where we were in our growth path. And we realized that her business was sort of on the back end side. And she was happy to continue serving us. But we realized, let's make the transition now so that we can move forward. Now we have more private equity holding and real estate holding. Let's try and find somebody who's not just tech stock oriented, but who can do a more full service for our family. And was it painful? Of course. At the same time, are we in a much better position? We believe so.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're working with a really good professional, someone who is operating for you as a fiduciary, then, they have a role to play in that too, to be willing to say to you, like, I would love continuing to work with you, but for these specific reasons, we're starting to push the boundaries of what I'm really good at, and love you, want to keep working together, but I think we need to have a conversation about whether or not, it's time for you to either add someone else for a specific piece, or, if another firm and another provider can better serve you. And holding on too long has a cost. And so a client, when we talk about taxes, hired us, said, hey, I've got a tax preparer that I really like. It's a relationship I've had for a while. I want to keep working with them. And I said, fine, that works for me. I'll give them whatever they need, and then, can take a look at the return. And that worked for a couple years until after the IPO, where you had all these different pieces of equity going on. And that tax preparer did not know how to match that W-2 to that 1099-B, and was telling the client, you know, $600,000 of income that's on both the W-2 and the 1099-B, and it's taxable in both places, and was telling my client, you should pay $200,000 in tax that you don't actually owe. And
Mm.
so had to navigate that, and have seen a lot of other examples like that. So there's definitely a point at which relationships that you've had, your situation has changed, and those relationships need to change.
It does, because the responsibility as the CEO of this business that is your portfolio, as I like to call it, is to grow and mature, right? You think about like Bezos and Zuckerberg and all these guys that went from in their basements to now running these multi-billion-dollar companies. They had to constantly evolve how they thought about money. I'm sure that the same guy that did Jeff Bezos' taxes then is not the same guy now. He's probably
Yep.
gone through a few of them, right? And so we have to understand that we have to evolve and change and be constantly, and that's our job, is to understand what's in the marketplace, how can I best be served, and what is my business growing into, and having that
Yep.
vision.
Yeah, and the CEO example is perfect. And the clients that I work with who are sales professionals, a lot of times they seem to have a really natural understanding of kind of this concept, because when I talk to them, about the sales role that they're currently in, they'll all express to me, that I'm able to do what I'm doing in terms of the sales that I'm making because I've got people within the company that help me get deals done. They give me what I need. I know how to navigate internally to make this stuff happen. If I leave and go to another company, I'm not sure that that's going to be the case there. And so they kind of transition from that in their sales role to that in their personal lives, and going, I want to keep selling. This is what I'm focused on. I need kind of that support staff in the other areas of my life. And as CEO, you know, if a CEO of a publicly traded company, if something's going on at the company and they show up at a press conference and say, I didn't know what was going on, I'm sorry, that doesn't work.
That
And
does not
so
apply. No.
you are expanding your capabilities, but you still need to be involved in the process, and you
Mm,
need to understand what your service professionals are doing for you. And that's something that we really work hard on is answering questions, building that foundation of knowledge to where okay, all the things that you can think about in your financial life, what's really important right now, what do you need to focus on, and then here's what we're doing for you,
mm.
here's how it works, here's the answers to any question that you have.
So that was number 3. We still got a couple more to go here. So the one I think this is really important is number 4 of these critical lessons, 5 critical lessons for technology employees is don't put taxes on a pedestal.
Yep. So especially when we talk about incentive stock options or we talk about an IPO, no one likes paying taxes. You mentioned the frustration, the pain of writing that check when you don't have the cash in your account. And so given that, and given that there are rules around taxes and clients feel like, hey, I can understand this,
Mm-hmm.
they'll want to optimize for taxes and they'll ignore the share price and the stock performance. And
Right.
and I sometimes tell them, hey, if you're really worried about this big tax bill that's coming, the stock market can fix that for you in a single day. If
Yes,
you're
sir.
not wanting to sell because you don't want to pay the taxes, the stock market, it'll take it one day to take care of that concern for you. You'll just have a much bigger concern once that tax problem's gone.
It's true. It's true. And this is where I really like the way that you think about, the order of operations of stock price, number of shares, and then taxes. I think, because the stock price going both directions, right? It can solve the problem. Like it can shoot up. You would have a much larger tax bill, but there's more upside. And it's
Yep.
important for people to understand, focus on that stock price first. Opposite direction, sure, you get a much lower tax bill, but then you also have less to take home too. Stock price definitely outweighs number of shares. I think of the employees that went out at Snowflake, didn't have a ton of shares, but all of a sudden it, went to such a high price. All of a sudden it changed a lot of things for them.
Yep.
And then you think about, and I like to think about it that way too, is I want to try and understand what's the maximum share price that I'm going to be able to get, especially as I'm doing some long-term strategies and harvesting. The number of shares, how am I managing to my number of shares? How can I get more shares when I'm getting refreshes? And then you manage to the taxes and then saying, okay, with that combination, how do I optimize for taxes on the back end?
Yeah,
I really think
absolutely.
that's a good order of operation.
Yep.
And then it's funny, I think the last one that you put is the pain of catastrophic loss.
Yeah. So catastrophic loss defined is, anytime the value of your company's stock falls by 75% or more.
Mm,
But regardless of the exact percentage of the drop, it's not fun. And so, I had a client who was on a flight that had to make an emergency landing where everyone on that flight was legitimately scared for their life. And you've got people screaming, people crying, people praying out loud. And when I worked with clients, coming out of 2021, going into 2022, where those stock prices were falling by more than 75%, that's what I see them going through and how I imagine that they feel. And they'll express things to me like, I had it and I let it go. And what they mean is the stock price had reached a point where they could have sold and been financially independent. But there's always that thought in the back of your mind, what if it goes higher? What if it goes higher? And so stock price is so important, and having that target price, that price at which, knowing what I know now, if I get this price in the future, that's a price at which I'm happy to start selling. And it doesn't mean we're going to sell everything. It just means now we have a clear signal to know when to start selling. And when you get there, we talk about what to sell and how much, and then we reevaluate what that target price should be moving forward.
I think that having a clear plan that's crafted out, because I think for ourselves, we always had goals. Our goals was we have these harvest goals, and we still do as we're still harvesting from my last IPO. We have the harvest goals, and the harvest goals are what we want to take home. When it hits the price, it's already baked into the plan. And it's so important for people to understand that what we're up against, what you're up against, what the conversations that I have as well too, is these very intelligent people that believe that their best thinking got them here to be this large of an ownership in a company, this company that's doing this well. Sometimes they don't know any different. They haven't experienced the drops, or they think that they're going to be able to work their way out of it. That's hard. What I always share with people is there's in investing, when you look at the history, or if you've been in it long enough, you understand there are some truths. One of the truths is that wealth is built through concentration, but it's actually, you actually keep it and you grow it through diversification. And if you're in an over concentrated position, and I know after our first IPO, I was in a 6-month lockout, 90% of our wealth, and it's like, don't look at it. I'm going to look at it. Don't look at it. I'm going to look at it. Like, it was horrible until we got to the point where we could start, harvesting some of it off. And I think people need to just, this is why I think conversations like this are so important. It's so important to share what we have learned to try and help people. Because even if one person is able to listen to this, have a clear plan, and hit those prices and harvest when they need to, we'll save one person that plane, emergency landing experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the best experiences I had around this was in 2020 with Zoom, and fairly early in that year, possibly at the end of 2019, started working with a client there. And we had this conversation about target price and about price being more important than taxes. And when, COVID hit and Zoom just went crazy, they called me and they said, what if we did a disqualifying disposition with our incentive stock options? Because, we're well beyond our target price. We really feel like this may be our best opportunity to sell, and the values are so much higher than anything we ever expected. Would we be crazy to do that? And I said, no, you're not crazy to do that, because, the price is the most important thing. And so they, did a lot of disqualifying dispositions. From a tax perspective, is kind of different, not the natural thing to do. But
Right.
they recognize that, because of the craziness in the world at that time, that they had a really unique opportunity to sell at a price that they never even imagined prior to the IPO.
That's amazing. I love stories like that, when people, take the advice, they're listening, they're paying attention, and I'm sure that turned out incredibly well for that family.
Yep.
Well, I could keep talking to you, but at some point we got to bring this thing home. Let's go through our fire round, and then we'll put a bow on this thing. What is the worst investing advice you've ever received?
So almost any advice that you get from your family. And so, and then as a financial advisor, sometimes, people treat you like, the person in New York, on the street selling watches out of their trench coat. They pull you to the
Right.
side and they say, hey, if you ever come across anything, let me know. And so, be really careful about advice that you get from your family and friends, because when we're in social settings, we only talk about our financial wins. Nobody talks about the things that they did that was a really bad idea, where they lost a lot of money. And we all
Yeah.
kind of present that filtered financial version of ourselves, like Instagram worthy, where it's nothing but the highlights and none of the struggles.
Yeah, that's great. How do you keep learning?
So my clients, are my best source of learning, and it'll be something that they say that kind of opens my eyes to something new, or to seeing something that I felt like I knew, but seeing it in a novel way. And so we're just very fortunate to get to work with this group, and to learn from their collective experience, and to think about their common problems, and how to go about solving them in new ways.
That's great. What do you do to recharge?
Free days. So 24 hours, no work, no email, no Slack, and doing some outdoor physical activity that's completely different from, sitting in a chair, standing at a desk, staring at a screen.
Oh, that's so important for everybody in tech.
Mm-hmm.
What is advice that you would give your younger self when it comes to investing?
So start sooner. One question potential clients will often ask is, okay, like I'm thinking about an IPO. That's the reason I reached out, but I'm not sure if like I should do this now or I should wait till later.
Mm,
And, I have complete confidence in the value that we provide. So for me, it's always, well, we should have had this conversation yesterday. Like, we need to get started right now. So start sooner, and then know yourself. And this is true for
mm,
clients too. Like, what are you really good at? What are you not great at? And then
mm.
what's your kind of overall strategy for how you're going to approach life and money?
Oh, that's so important. And what soft skill do you think has helped your career the most?
So listening, um, early on in kind of my early training as an advisor, the idea of that first meeting that you have with someone, you should only be talking, 20% of the time. And so that first conversation I have with a potential client, it's always, so, tell me about what prompted you to reach out. And in a perfect scenario, they just go, because a lot of times there's things that they've thought about, that they've really wanted to talk to somebody about, and they've wanted to do this for a while, and you open the door and you let them start talking, and that's where they'll share those things that really help me develop new ideas that are going to impact the way that we go about solving their problems.
Oh, that's so good. Well, I know that I'm going to make sure and put in the show notes some of the links to some of the blogs that you have on RSUs that I think are so helpful. You also have some on RSUs, some on taxes. But where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so kbfinancialadvisors.com. The blog is something we really enjoy, kind of sharing our work with others. And so I tell people, there's really no secrets. You read the blogs, you know what you're going to hear from us if we start working together in the way that we think about these topics.
Well, Landon, I can't thank you enough. I appreciate the time. And, maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to. Really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you.